If you walk through the Alfama district of Lisbon today, you can practically taste the salt air blowing off the Tagus River. It's a neighborhood defined by ancient stone and sheer, unforgiving verticality. Looming over this labyrinth of narrow streets is the National Pantheon, originally the Church of Santa Engrácia. With its massive dome and gleaming white stone, it looks like a monument to Portuguese glory. But that exterior is hiding a deeply unsettling history. To understand what happened here, we have to rewind to 1568. In the intense religious heat of the Catholic Counter-Reformation, the Infanta Donna Maria sponsored the construction of a parish church right on this spot. Looking at this cross-section, the builders made a critical mistake, placing the foundation on a steep incline over loose strata. During the Spanish annexation of 1580, Portugal became a contested kingdom. Cracks began to show in the church's walls, mirroring the fracturing society. Long before this site became a symbol of national pride, it was defined by physical instability. It was a structural weakness the local population would eventually attribute to a dark supernatural curse. The breaking point arrived on the night of January 15, 1630. Unknown intruders smashed into the church, vandalized the sanctuary, and desecrated the sacred tabernacle. Ask someone on the street today, and they might tell you a romantic local legend. They'll say a young man named Simão Pires was sneaking around the church grounds to visit his forbidden love, a novice named Violante, when he was caught and mistakenly accused of the crime. The archival records tell a different story. The man arrested was Simão de Sousa Tavares. He was a new Christian, meaning he descended from Jews forced to convert to Catholicism, and he was caught squarely in the crosshairs of the Portuguese Inquisition. Tavares actually had a verified alibi, proving he was nowhere near the church that night. The tribunal ignored it. For the Inquisition, a highly public desecration was the perfect excuse to seize new Christian wealth and reinforce religious paranoia. The state required a scapegoat. Tavares was paraded through the streets of Lisbon, publicly degraded, and ultimately burned alive at the stake. According to folklore, as the flames rose, Tavares shouted a final curse. Because an innocent man was dying, the Church of Santa Engrácia would never be finished. There is no historical record of him ever saying those words, but the horrific public execution of an innocent man permanently scarred the city's relationship with the ground the church stood on. 50 years later, in 1681, a massive storm battered Lisbon. The church, with its poorly engineered foundation resting on that steep Alfama slope, finally gave way and collapsed into a pile of rubble. For the terrified locals, the collapse was absolute proof of Tavares's dying curse. But for the Portuguese crown, it was a blank slate, a chance to build a grander monument. The following year, royal architect João Antunes took over the site. He threw out the old parish plans and proposed a radical, Italian-inspired Baroque design. This diagram shows the sheer ambition of Antunes's vision. Instead of a traditional rectangular nave, he designed a centralized Greek cross plan, 4 symmetrical arms anchored by sweeping, undulating exterior walls. It was a layout entirely unseen in Portugal at the time. It was brilliant, but incredibly complex to engineer. By demanding such precise stonework and immense resources, Antunes inadvertently created a structural trap that would snare the project for generations. Progress ground to a halt in 1712 when João Antunes died. The project lost its visionary leader at the exact moment a new monarch, King João V, took the throne. Thanks to a massive influx of gold and diamonds from colonial Brazil, the king had the deepest pockets in Europe. But he completely lost interest in finishing a localized parish church in Lisbon. He decided to divert the nation's newfound wealth outside the capital, pouring it into the construction of the colossal palace convent of Mafra. Without royal funding, Santa Engrácia was abandoned. For the next 2.5 centuries, its towering marble walls stood completely open to the sky. Over the years, the ruined shell was repurposed into a municipal scrapyard, a coal storage site, and even an army shoe factory. The endless delays embedded themselves into the culture. To this day, if a Portuguese person wants to describe a project that drags on forever with no end in sight, they call it an Obra de Santa Engrácia, a work of Saint Engrácia. The building's state of perpetual ruin had nothing to do with a martyr's curse. It was simply a monument to royal vanity and bureaucratic stagnation. The church remained an unroofed shell until the mid-20th century. By then, Portugal was ruled by the authoritarian Estado Novo regime. For dictator Antonio de Oliveira Salazar, a 250-year-old monument to national inefficiency was an embarrassment that had to be resolved. In 1966, the state launched a massive public works initiative. They hoisted a heavy, double concrete dome onto the historic walls, officially finishing the project and inaugurating the space as the National Pantheon. Today, you'll find symbolic stone markers, cenotaphs for historical explorers like Vasco da Gama inside, but the actual tombs were reserved for a different kind of icon. The space became a resting place for beloved modern Portuguese heroes. The interment of the legendary fado singer Amália Rodrigues cemented the Pantheon as a shrine to Portuguese cultural identity. The later addition of football icon Eusébio signaled an evolution in national values, recognizing sporting greatness alongside political and maritime achievements. Even today, the decision of who gets to be buried in the Pantheon sparks intense debate across the country. It's a living, ongoing conversation about who represents the best of Portugal. It took nearly 4 long centuries to get here. A physical space born out of counter-Reformation zeal, stained by the execution of an innocent man, and abandoned by vain kings, somehow survived it all. Today, it stands as the finished sanctuary, where a modern democracy guards its soul.